Welcome to CP Newsroom. I'm Nicole Menzi. What happens when your pastor shows up one Sunday and says he's no longer quite so sure Jesus was divine or that God even exists? How might a pastor or any Christian really come to this point? Joining us to take a look at this issue is Dr. James Danaher. Danaher is an author, professor of philosophy, and head of the philosophy department at Nyack College. Welcome, Dr. Danaher.
Hi.
All right, so how might a pastor or a Christian who's believed, since childhood maybe, come to the point of unbelief?
Well, I think what happens, especially with higher education, is you're being introduced to a 21st century understanding of the world and the understanding of the human condition. And a lot of times that doesn't fit with your Sunday school understanding. And what happens is there's a crisis there, and a lot of people end up walking away from Christianity because it doesn't, their understanding of the 21st century doesn't fit with their Sunday school understanding. Instead of reconceptualizing the gospel in a 21st century understanding.
So of course, seminaries and other institutes of higher education, when you end up at those places, it's a time of thinking and crisis and questioning. So what kind of mindset should one have before going to seminary?
I think an open mind. And that's, I'm constantly writing against our modern concept of truth. That was a mathematical model and the idea of certainty and objectivity. And the truth is the spiritual journey is an open journey, and we have to be open to the things God's doing and the way that's changing our conceptual understanding. And I think that's what higher education and seminary is supposed to be about. But a lot of people are still locked into that primary understanding that they got at their mother's knee, and they see that as sacred.
Right.
So any new kind of ideas they see as a threat to truth itself. While it's not a threat to truth, it's just a threat to their understanding.
Okay. And so how can faith communities maybe, or families even, when their student comes back and they have this new understanding of looking at Jesus, looking at the gospel, how can they reconcile what they're hearing with what they're used to?
Yeah, well, I think we have to reconceptualize the whole idea of truth, and the spiritual truths are journeys, and we're not always in the same place. I often see people that are where I was 20 years ago, and I roll my eyes at them, and I just get convicted by God. That was a holy place. I blessed you there. Why can't I bless those people in that place? And that we can tolerate people being in different places. It's just amazing to me that the history of Christianity is so full of Christians whacking Christians and torturing Christians because their understandings differ. It just seems to me so naive, especially in the 21st century when we know that our experience of the world is an interpretation based upon that understanding we bring to it.
Okay.
And that understanding is constantly changing. But Jesus is the thing we come back to, and we come back to, and we come back to.
Okay, so exploring that point a bit, you hear a lot about perspective and absolute truth and so forth.
Yeah.
So what is the middle ground, do you think, or the essentials for Christians who may be concerned, maybe I'm doubting too much or questioning too much?
Yeah, I don't think there is an objective truth, or if there is, God knows that objective truth. Ours is always perspective, but that's what Jesus is giving us. He's giving us the Jesus perspective. And we've made that into some sort of objective truth to believe doctrines, to believe theology, instead of trying to take on that Jesus perspective, And I think that's when he says, follow me, the 17 times in the Gospels where he says, follow me, that's really what it's about, to take on the mind of Christ and to come to conceptualize the world the way he conceptualized the world, to see sin as he saw sin, to see law. He says to the Pharisees, I'm fulfilling the law. They say, no, you're destroying the law. Obviously, they have two completely different ideas of law. And it's trying to get Jesus' conceptualization of law, of faith, of sin, things like that. And I think that's what the gospel gives you.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there for you. So to be a Christian, you don't have to believe on abortion and marriage the way maybe the bulk of the greater community does.
Jesus, Lord, and are you being made into his likeness, in particular in terms of mercy and forgiveness. I think if we ever got that that's what the gospel was really all about, instead of righteousness, for thousands of years, we've been making Christianity into a theology that how do we get to be righteous so God will love us? And the truth is, God loves you in the midst of your sin. You don't have to become righteous. It's always about his mercy and forgiveness. And that's the real sanctification, that he wants to make us into not his righteous likeness, but into his merciful and forgiving likeness. And if we ever got that, the virus of the gospel would take over the world tomorrow.
Virus of the gospel. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of infighting. There's always been disagreement in the church. Tension leads to growth sometimes.
At least we don't kill one another today. Well, we maybe want to, but we don't.
Right, right. So how, for example, when you have popular pastors like Rob Bell, who comes out with a new understanding, and then you have other popular pastors, for example, like John Piper, who might say, farewell, Rob Bell, Yeah. So how does everyone kind of deal with
this
that?
last book that just was released March 1st, it's called The Second Truth. And what I argue is, since we know that reality as we experience it is an interpretation, we have to really question the understanding that we're bringing to the data of our experience. And when you question that understanding, there's really two truths. There's the truth that you learn at your mother's knee, and you have to treat that as absolutely certain. But at a certain place, you come to realize the mythic nature of that. And then you set out in search of a second truth, a better way to conceptualize the world. And Christianity is made up of people that are still defending that first truth, like Piper, and other people that are moving into that second truth, a 21st century way to conceptualize the gospel. And we have to find a way to live together, because we're both talking about Jesus. And to think that, no, my interpretation is the ultimate truth, whether it's your first truth or whether it's your second truth, Jesus is the truth. And it's always out in front of us. None of us ever get it. We're always pursuing it. I've never met anybody in my life and I would go, that guy's got the Jesus perspective. Right. Some come closer than others, but that's what we're always pursuing. And it's always out in front of us. Right? But there's others that want the security of hanging on to that. We get a great security by thinking that we know. We know. And one of my favorite scriptures is in the book of Ezekiel, where God says to Ezekiel, can these dry bones rise up and live? And Ezekiel has the right answer. Thou knowest, Lord. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't need to know. I just need to continue to follow and be drawn into that Jesus perspective. I take that very literally when Jesus says, I am the truth, that he's talking about his second truth, the Jesus perspective.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Danaher. And thank you for tuning in. See you next time.